The Unshakable Foundation, 9 Stoic Principles for Inner Strength. Introduction. There are moments when you feel like you're sinking, not because life is too hard, but because something inside you starts to waver. You second-guess yourself. You give up too easily. You get frustrated, feel small, overwhelmed. But what's truly frightening isn't your situation. It's that you've forgotten one simple truth. Your real strength has always been in your hands. This exploration isn't here to tell you you're special. It's not here to promise that everything will be okay. It's here to remind you of something that's been drowned out by all the noise. You can be stronger than anyone if you train your mind from the inside out. Stoicism isn't just a philosophy for books and quotes. It's a guide for those who've stood in chaos and held their ground. It teaches you how to face pain without resentment, stay calm in the storm, and turn every ordinary day into a step forward. If you've ever felt weak, lost, or unsettled, keep reading because you're about to remember you're not as fragile as you think. The 9 principles that follow aren't just philosophical concepts. They're practical tools forged in the crucible of real human experience, tested across centuries, and proven effective in the most challenging circumstances life can present. Each principle builds upon the others, creating a comprehensive framework for developing the kind of inner strength that cannot be shaken by external circumstances. Number 1, you control you. You can't control your boss getting angry when you turn in a report late, but you can control not snapping back. You can't control your partner being distant over text today, but you can choose how to respond with calm or with jealousy spiraling out of control. Some days, the only things you can control are brushing your teeth on time and going to bed early so you don't wake up ready to bite the world. And somehow those small choices, that quiet discipline, are the essence of Stoic philosophy, knowing what's yours to manage and what's not. This fundamental principle, the dichotomy of control, represents perhaps the most transformative insight in all of human psychology. When we truly internalize this distinction, we stop wasting energy on futile attempts to control the uncontrollable and instead channel that energy into areas where we can make a real difference. The psychological relief that comes from this shift cannot be overstated. Anxiety decreases when we stop trying to manage outcomes beyond our influence. Frustration diminishes when we focus on our responses rather than others' actions. Peace increases when we align our efforts with our actual sphere of influence. We get stuck because we try to control everything. How others feel, how work turns out, what the future holds, how to keep everyone from being disappointed in us. But life doesn't follow your to-do list. The weather won't clear up just because you've got a big date. People won't always treat you fairly just because you treat them well. And when you keep trying to control the uncontrollable, what gets worn down isn't the world, it's you. This wearing down manifests in countless ways. Chronic stress from trying to manage others' opinions, exhaustion from attempting to orchestrate perfect outcomes, disappointment from expecting life to conform to our plans. The irony is that the more we try to control external circumstances, the more out of control we feel internally. It's a vicious cycle that can only be broken by redirecting our focus to what actually lies within our power. A remote only works when it's pointed at your own TV, but here you are holding the remote and mashing the change button on other people's lives, on the pessim, on things forever out of reach. Flip the channel. What can you control today? Your patience, your tone, your reactions, the words you choose, how you get back up when you fall. This metaphor illuminates the absurdity of misdirected control attempts. We wouldn't expect a TV remote to change the channel on a neighbor's television, yet we persistently try to use our mental and emotional energy to alter things equally beyond our reach. The solution isn't to throw away the remote, but to point it at the right device, our own minds, our own choices, our own responses. Epictetus once said, "Don't seek for everything to happen as you wish it would, but rather wish that everything happens as it actually will. Then your life will flow well." No surprise that a man who began life as a slave became one of history's great philosophers. He understood that real freedom isn't out there, it's within. Epictetus's background as a slave makes his wisdom particularly profound. He experienced the ultimate loss of external freedom, his body, his time, His circumstances were completely controlled by others. Yet from this position of total powerlessness, he discovered the one realm that remained inviolably his own, his inner life. His teachings carry the weight of lived experience, not merely theoretical speculation. When he speaks of freedom, he speaks as one who has found it in the most unfree circumstances imaginable. Look at Amy Purdy, a Paralympic snowboarder who lost both legs to meningitis. She didn't wait for the world to pity her. She trained, strapped on prosthetics, and rode straight into victory. She couldn't control what happened to her, but she could control her mindset, her discipline, her drive. And in doing so, she changed her outcome. Purdy's story exemplifies the practical application of this principle. Faced with a devastating loss that was completely outside her control, she could have focused on the unfairness of her situation, the limitations imposed by her disability, or the sympathy of others. Instead, she identified what remained within her power, her attitude, her effort, her commitment to her goals, and poured her energy into those areas. The result wasn't just personal achievement, but inspiration for countless others facing their own seemingly insurmountable challenges. If you're wondering where to start small. Next time you're stuck in a long line at the coffee shop, instead of watching the clock and seething, pause and ask, what can I control right now? Maybe it's your breath. Maybe it's your facial expression. Maybe it's one positive thought. It's a quiet punch, precise, deliberate, against the chaos inside you. These micro moments of conscious choice are where real transformation begins. The coffee shop line becomes a training ground for patience. Traffic jams become opportunities to practice acceptance. Difficult conversations become chances to choose our responses carefully. Each small victory builds the mental muscle needed for larger challenges. The person who can remain calm in minor irritations is developing the capacity to remain steady in major crises. The more you focus on what's within your control, the stronger you become, not the flashy kind of strong, the quiet kind, like deep roots that hold steady in a storm, even if the branches sway. Your power doesn't lie in changing others. It lies in not letting others change you. That's the one thing that's truly yours. This metaphor of deep roots speaks to the nature of true strength. Surface-level strength might impress observers, the flashy display of force, the dramatic gesture, the impressive performance. But deep-rooted strength operates differently. It's not visible from a distance, doesn't seek attention, doesn't need validation. Yet when the storms of life hit, when external pressures mount, when circumstances become chaotic, it's this quiet strength that keeps you upright while more impressive-looking structures collapse around you. And when you start living with that mindset, you'll be ready to face a tougher but deeper truth. Obstacles don't block your path. They are the way the world finds out just how strong you really are. Number 2, adversity shapes you. I once watched a boy get laughed at for missing a penalty kick during a school soccer match. After that, he stopped playing. Not because he hated the game, but because he was afraid of being seen at his weakest. A few months later, I noticed him staying after school, quietly practicing that same kick over and over. No audience, no coach, just him and the ball. At the end of the year, he scored the winning goal that sent his team to the finals. The crowd went wild, but what stuck with me wasn't the goal. It was the way he faced his shame. Not with drama, not with excuses. He just trained in silence on his own terms. This story encapsulates the essence of how character is forged through adversity. The initial failure wasn't the defining moment. The response to that failure was. In that quiet choice to return to practice, alone and unseen, the boy demonstrated a fundamental truth about human development. We are not shaped by what happens to us, but by how we choose to respond to what happens to us. The missed penalty was an external event beyond his ultimate control, but his decision to use that failure as fuel for improvement was entirely within his power. Most of us don't break because of big failures. We break because our reactions are small. One harsh comment ruins our entire day. A missed promotion shakes our self-worth. A breakup makes us question everything. But those moments, they're not the end. They're the beginning of your training. The disproportion between trigger and response reveals something crucial about modern psychological fragility. We become hypersensitive to minor setbacks while simultaneously underestimating our capacity to handle major challenges. A single critical email can devastate us for hours, yet humans have survived wars, plagues, famines, and countless other catastrophes throughout history. This suggests that our breaking points are often artificially low, set by our interpretations rather than the actual magnitude of events. The Stoic approach is to recalibrate our responses, to save our emotional energy for genuinely significant challenges while maintaining equanimity in the face of daily frustrations. Just like a muscle needs resistance to grow, your inner strength needs struggle to take shape. Think about the people you admire most. Are they the ones who had it easy, or the ones who kept moving forward when life said no? The single mom who works 2 jobs and still laughs with her kids. The guy who got laid off then came back stronger with a new skill. The girl who used to stutter but now speaks on stage. They didn't avoid hardship, they walked through it. This biological metaphor isn't merely poetic, it reflects a fundamental truth about human development that modern psychology has validated. Post-traumatic growth is a documented phenomenon where individuals who face significant challenges often develop greater psychological resilience, deeper relationships, and clearer life purpose than those who haven't been tested. The key factor isn't the presence or absence of difficulty, but the individual's response to that difficulty. Those who view challenges as opportunities for growth tend to emerge stronger, while those who view them as evidence of victimization often remain stuck. Epictetus once said something that few people quote, but it hits hard. Difficulties show a person's character. So when trouble comes, think of yourself as a wrestler whom God, like a trainer, has paired with a tough young buck. Now swap the wrestler for yourself. Picture the challenge. Your boss snaps at you unfairly. Your car breaks down in the rain. Someone you trusted goes silent. That's your opponent, and this is your training ground. The wrestling metaphor reframes adversity from something that happens to you into something that happens for you. A wrestler doesn't curse his opponent for providing resistance. He understands that without that resistance, there would be no sport, no improvement, no victory. The opponent's strength forces the wrestler to discover reserves of power he didn't know he possessed. Similarly, life's challenges serve as training partners, pushing us to develop capacities we might never have accessed in comfortable circumstances. The unfair boss becomes an opportunity to practice patience and professionalism under pressure. The broken car becomes a chance to demonstrate grace under inconvenience. The silent friend becomes a test of our capacity for understanding and forgiveness. So the real question is, will you respond like a victim or like someone in training? Next time something doesn't go your way, pause just for a few seconds. Ask yourself, if this is a test, what grade do I want to earn right now? That one question can shift your mindset from reacting emotionally to responding intentionally. This reframing question creates psychological distance between the event and your response, inserting a moment of choice where there might otherwise be automatic reaction. It transforms you from a passive recipient of circumstances into an active participant in your own character development. The grade metaphor is particularly powerful because it implies that there are better and worse ways to handle any given situation, and that we have the power to choose which level of response we want to demonstrate. Here's something practical. Every time something frustrates you, whether it's criticism, delay, rejection, write it down. But don't just record what happened. Write how you responded. Be honest. After a week, look back. You'll start to see a pattern, and more importantly, you'll see that growth doesn't happen in smooth moments. It happens in the hard ones when no one's watching, and you decide not to give up. This practice serves multiple psychological functions. First, it increases self-awareness by making unconscious reactions conscious. Many of us operate on autopilot, reacting to events without conscious choice. Writing down both trigger and response forces us to examine our patterns objectively. Second, it reveals the gap between our idealized self-image and our actual behavior under pressure. This gap isn't cause for shame, but for growth. It shows us exactly where we need to focus our development efforts. Third, it documents progress over time. Character development is often so gradual that we don't notice it happening, but written records can reveal significant growth that might otherwise go unrecognized. Fourth, it transforms random experiences into curriculum for personal development, giving meaning and purpose to even frustrating encounters. So how about you? Did life throw something at you this week that tested your patience or resolve? Share it in the comments. Not just the wins, share the setbacks you kept walking through. Someone out there might need to hear exactly that. And if this resonated with you, hit subscribe. Not just to follow, but to keep showing up for the next round. Stronger, wiser, more unshakable than yesterday. The invitation to share setbacks rather than just successes reflects a crucial aspect of real strength. The willingness to acknowledge struggle without being defined by it. In a culture obsessed with highlight reels and success stories, admitting difficulty can feel vulnerable. But this vulnerability is actually a form of courage, and it serves others by normalizing the reality that everyone faces challenges. Your willingness to share how you walk through difficulty, not around it, might be exactly the encouragement someone else needs to keep going. Number 3, will over feelings. There are days when you wake up and just want to give up. Nothing's wrong. No one insulted you, the weather's nice, but you still want to stay in bed, pull the blanket over your head, and disappear from the world for a while. It's strange, isn't it? Nothing bad happened, but your emotions hit rock bottom. What's holding you down isn't pain. It's something quieter, heavier, a kind of invisible stagnation. This phenomenon speaks to one of the most misunderstood aspects of human psychology, the independence of emotion from circumstance. We expect our feelings to correlate logically with external events. Good things happen, we feel good. Bad things happen, we feel bad. But emotional life operates according to far more complex rhythms involving biochemistry, sleep cycles, hormonal fluctuations, subconscious processing of stress, and countless other factors beyond our immediate awareness. Understanding this independence is liberating because it means we don't need to wait for our emotions to align with our intentions before we can act. A lot of people live their whole lives like this. They wait for the feelings to come back before they start, but they never do. And then they think, maybe I'm just not strong enough. That's not it. The problem isn't that you're weak, it's that you think you have to feel strong to act. This waiting for feelings to align with actions represents one of the most self-defeating patterns in human behavior. It assumes that emotions should drive behavior, that we should only act when we feel motivated, inspired, or confident. But this approach makes us slaves to our moods, which are often beyond our direct control and frequently unreliable guides to appropriate action. The entrepreneur who waits to feel confident before starting a business will never start. The writer who waits to feel inspired before writing will never write. The person who waits to feel loving before acting lovingly will never develop deeper relationships. But here's the truth. The strongest people don't wait for emotions to lead. They let willpower speak first. Picture this. You're heading to work after a fight with your partner. Your emotions want you to call in sick, avoid everyone, maybe even snap at a coworker just because you're upset. But willpower says the job still needs to get done. Your attitude still needs to be right. Handle the personal stuff later. If you choose will over emotion in that moment, you've just won a quiet but critical battle. How many people ruin their careers over 15 minutes of unchecked emotion? This scenario illustrates the practical stakes involved in the will versus feeling dynamic. Our emotions often push us toward actions that provide immediate relief but long-term consequences. Snapping at a coworker might release momentary frustration, but could damage professional relationships for months or years. Calling in sick when we're emotionally upset might provide temporary escape, but establishes a pattern of avoidance that weakens our capacity to handle future challenges. The person who consistently chooses will over emotion builds a reputation for reliability and steadiness that becomes one of their greatest professional and personal assets. We tend to measure our strength by how we shine at our best. But the Stoics saw it differently. They looked at how you show up when you don't feel like it, when the drive is gone, when you're tired, when motivation dries up, and yet you still do what needs to be done. This reframes our entire understanding of strength and character. Popular culture celebrates peak performance. The athlete who excels when feeling confident, the speaker who delivers brilliantly when inspired, the leader who succeeds when energized. But Stoic strength is measured by consistency regardless of internal conditions. The true test isn't how well you perform when everything aligns perfectly, but how steadily you continue when nothing feels right. This kind of strength is less dramatic but more reliable, less impressive to observers but more valuable in the long run. Epictetus once said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." And here's the thing, self-mastery isn't about feeling good. It's about standing firm even when you feel nothing at all. Self-mastery in this context isn't the ability to control our emotions. That's often impossible and can be psychologically damaging when attempted through suppression. Rather, it's the ability to prevent our emotions from automatically controlling our actions. It's the difference between emotional suppression, unhealthy, and emotional regulation, healthy. The self-mastered person doesn't deny their feelings, but refuses to be driven by them. They acknowledge emotions as information while maintaining the freedom to choose their responses based on values, commitments, and long-term thinking rather than momentary impulses. Let me tell you about Ethan, a young chef in London. He dreamed of opening his own restaurant, but for 3 years he worked as a kitchen assistant, scrubbing hundreds of pots every day. Co-workers quit. Ethan stayed. He kept learning. He once said, "Some days I wanted to scream from exhaustion and boredom, but I knew if I quit today, I'd turn tomorrow into an excuse." He didn't feel motivated every day. What he had was routine and a stubborn refusal to let his emotions call the shots. 6 years later, Ethan opened his first restaurant, not thanks to inspiration, but because he believed that his will could carry him through the moments when his mind wanted to collapse. Ethan's story demonstrates that persistence isn't about maintaining constant enthusiasm for our goals. Motivation is too unreliable and temporary for that. Instead, it's about developing systems and habits that function independently of our emotional state. His stubborn refusal to let emotions call the shots wasn't emotional numbness, but emotional wisdom. He acknowledged his feelings of frustration and boredom without allowing them to dictate his actions. The key insight in his statement about turning today into an excuse reveals his understanding that every moment we choose emotion over will, we make it easier to make the same choice again tomorrow. Conversely, every time we choose will over emotion, we strengthen our capacity for future self-directed action. If you're feeling stuck, like you're not getting anything done, pause. Put your hand on your chest. Breathe and ask yourself honestly, what's one thing I need to do today, even if I have zero motivation for it? Once you've got your answer, don't wait to feel ready. Just start. Wash that dish. Open the file. Type a few words. Log off social media. Do one small thing, not because it feels good, but because you chose it. This practice acting despite feelings rather than because of them builds what we might call emotional independence. The physical gesture of putting your hand on your chest serves multiple functions. It grounds you in your body, activates the parasympathetic nervous system through deeper breathing, and creates a moment of pause between feeling and action. The question itself is crucial because it acknowledges the absence of motivation while still insisting on action. Starting with one small thing bypasses the overwhelm that often accompanies larger goals while building momentum through completion. The key phrase, "because you chose it," reminds you that you are the agent of your own life, not a victim of your emotional weather. Believing in your inner strength isn't about chanting, "I'm fine, I'm fine." It's about doing the right thing even when you feel like you have no strength at all. That's where real power begins to form. Every small action is a brick. You don't have to build the whole house today, but you do have to lay the first brick. This metaphor captures the accumulative nature of character development. Grand gestures and dramatic transformations make for compelling stories, but real change happens through the aggregation of small, consistent actions. The bricklaying analogy also makes the process manageable. We don't need to summon the strength to complete the entire project, just to take the next small step. Each act of will over feeling, no matter how minor, contributes to the foundation of inner strength that will support larger challenges in the future. And if you're wondering, what should I act on when emotions aren't my compass anymore? That's when you're ready for the next lesson. Because the Stoics didn't follow feelings, they acted on values. And that's exactly where we're headed next. Number 4, principles over circumstance. There are mornings when you wake up full of drive, feeling like you could take on the world. And then there are other days when getting out of bed feels impossible. Everything's a blur. Work seems pointless, and your emotions pull you away from everything you once believed in those moments. What keeps you grounded? If you only act when things are going well, how solid are you really? This question strikes at the heart of authentic character versus circumstantial performance. Many of us function well under ideal conditions, when we're rested, when others support us, when the path ahead is clear, when we feel motivated and optimistic. But the true measure of our character emerges when these favorable conditions disappear. The person who is kind only when they feel good isn't truly kind, they're conditionally pleasant. The person who works hard only when inspired isn't disciplined, they're opportunistically productive. Real strength shows itself precisely when external supports are removed, and we must rely on internal principles to guide our actions. This is where Stoicism steps in, not as motivation, but as a compass. Don't live by circumstances, live by your values. It's easy for a man to keep his promises when life goes smoothly. But what does he do when he loses his job, gets betrayed, or is so exhausted he just wants to give up? Values mean nothing if they only show up when it's easy. A Stoic doesn't wait for inspiration. They do what's right because it's who they are, not because life makes it convenient. The compass metaphor is particularly apt because a compass works regardless of weather conditions, time of day, or emotional state of the person using it. It provides consistent orientation through its alignment with magnetic north, not through interpretation of local conditions. Similarly, values provide direction when emotions become unreliable and circumstances become chaotic. A compass doesn't make the terrain easier to navigate. It simply ensures you know which direction you are headed. Values don't make life's challenges disappear. They ensure your responses are consistent with your deeper commitments rather than your temporary feelings. Marcus Aurelius once said, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." It's simple, it's blunt, it's brutally practical, a moral filter in a world full of noise. So ask yourself, are you acting on what's right or just reacting to emotions, pressure, and other people's opinions? This binary framework cuts through the complexity and rationalization that often paralyze ethical decision-making. When faced with choices, we tend to complicate matters by considering multiple factors. What will benefit us personally? What others expect? What feels comfortable? What seems expedient? Marcus Aurelius reduces this complexity to two simple questions that serve as a moral filter. Is this right? Is this true? These questions bypass self-serving rationalization and social pressure, focusing attention on fundamental ethical considerations. The simplicity is deceptive. Applying these questions consistently requires courage and often demands sacrifice of immediate comfort or advantage. Let me tell you a story about a man named David. Nothing extraordinary about him, just your average office worker with a steady routine. Then one day, David's boss gets transferred and a new manager steps in. Less competent, less fair, and quick to make his life miserable. David had easy options: play politics, flatter his way up, compromise his values, or quit like many others did. But he chose none of that. Instead, David kept doing his job well. He didn't cross any ethical lines. He didn't lash out. He didn't lose his kindness, even when no one noticed, even when no one cared. David's situation illustrates how principles are tested not in dramatic moments, but in the grinding dailiness of difficult circumstances. His new manager created an environment where conventional wisdom might suggest either fighting fire with fire or simply removing yourself from the situation. The political approach would involve manipulation and game playing. The aggressive approach would involve confrontation and retaliation. The avoidance approach would involve quitting to find better circumstances elsewhere. But David's response was guided by his principles rather than by the behavior of his manager or the advice of conventional wisdom. He maintained professional excellence because that reflected his values, not because his manager deserved it. He preserved his ethical standards because that's who he was, not because it was strategically advantageous. Sure, there were nights he wavered, lying in bed wondering what's the point. But deep down, he knew if you abandon your principles just because things get hard, then they were never really principles to begin with. Real strength shows not when you have every reason to keep going, but when you don't, and you still do. The nighttime doubts David experienced reveal the human cost of principled living. Acting on values rather than circumstances often involves sacrifice of immediate comfort, of social advantage, of the satisfaction that comes from retaliation. These doubts are normal and don't indicate weakness of character, but rather the genuine difficulty of maintaining principles under pressure. The key insight is that principles are most truly tested when following them requires something of us. If adherence to our values was always easy and immediately rewarded, they wouldn't be principles, they'd be preferences. So how do you build the habit of living by values, not by circumstance? Start simple. Choose 3 personal principles. Write them down. Read them every morning like a promise to yourself. They don't have to be profound. Don't lie. Don't be late. Help others when I can. Then each night ask yourself, did I live by these today? This practice creates a daily rhythm of intention and accountability that gradually aligns actions with stated values. The morning reading functions as a commitment renewal, reminding you of what you've decided matters most before the day's pressures and distractions take over. The simplicity of the principles is important. Complex ethical frameworks are hard to remember and apply under pressure, while simple guidelines can be quickly accessed in decision-making moments. The evening review serves as honest self-assessment without the harsh judgment that often accompanies moral failure. The question isn't, am I a good person? But rather, did I act according to my stated values today? The answer won't measure what you've achieved, but what you've held on to. True strength isn't in your list of wins. It's in staying whole after life's chaos tries to pull you apart. Like the Bible says, do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. You can fight darkness with anger or stop it cold, with a goodness so clear it leaves no space for it to spread. This reframes success from external accomplishment to internal integrity. Instead of asking, what did I get? The question becomes, who did I remain? This shift in measurement acknowledges that life often involves forces beyond our control that can affect our external achievements. Economic downturns can derail careers, health crises can disrupt plans, relationship changes can alter our circumstances. But our character, our adherence to our values, our choice to respond with goodness rather than retaliation, these remain within our power regardless of external chaos. The biblical reference points to a strategic truth. Evil thrives on reaction and escalation, but goodness requires no response because it contains no attack to defend against. The more you live by your values, the lighter you feel. No pretending, no chasing approval, no panic when the world shifts. You don't need everything to be fine. You just need to stay true. And once you learn to stand steady in the wind, you realize calm isn't weakness. It's the deepest kind of power a person can have. This lightness comes from the congruence between belief and action, from the relief of not having to maintain multiple personas or constantly adjust your behavior based on circumstances. When your actions flow from your values rather than from external pressures, there's no internal conflict to manage, no cognitive dissonance to resolve, no performance to maintain. You become the same person in private as in public, in difficulty as in ease, under pressure as in comfort. This consistency eliminates the exhausting work of impression management and allows your energy to flow toward meaningful action rather than toward maintaining facades. Number 5, power in stillness. Have you ever sat in a group where everyone was talking over each other, eager to prove their point, and then there's that one person quietly watching, not rushing to speak? What did you feel about them? Were they timid, or did they simply know they didn't need to prove anything? This scenario reveals something profound about the nature of true confidence and power. In a culture that equates volume with importance, motion with progress, and constant engagement with relevance, we often mistake stillness for weakness or disengagement. But careful observation reveals otherwise. The person who doesn't feel compelled to prove their intelligence, wit, or worthiness often possesses the deepest form of self-assurance. They understand that real power doesn't announce itself, doesn't compete for attention, and doesn't need validation from others to maintain its strength. More often than not, the quietest person in the room is the one holding the real power. They choose to observe, to listen, to conserve their energy instead of wasting it on pointless battles. That's true strength, and it's the essence of Stoicism. Stillness isn't silence. It's the conscious choice not to react on impulse, to not get pulled into someone else's emotional game, to not be a puppet on the strings of your feelings. The distinction between stillness and silence is crucial. Silence can be passive, imposed, or avoidant, the result of having nothing to say, being intimidated, or withdrawing from engagement. Stillness, by contrast, is active and chosen, the result of having something to say, but choosing when and how to say it, feeling confident enough not to need constant validation, and engaging strategically rather than reactively. The still person could dominate the conversation but chooses not to, could prove their superiority but sees no value in doing so, could win every petty argument, but recognizes that such victories often cost more than they're worth. Think back to the last time someone complained, nagged, or blamed you and you snapped back. What happened? Tension escalated. The relationship took a hit, and you carried that anger with you the rest of the day. Was it worth it? A Stoic would flip the script and ask, is this worth losing my peace over? Seneca once said, the greatest remedy for anger is delay. Just by slowing down a beat, you've already won. You're not suppressing, you're seeing clearly. This retrospective analysis often reveals the futility of reactive engagement. The immediate satisfaction of setting someone straight or defending yourself quickly gives way to regret about escalated conflict, damaged relationships, and prolonged internal agitation. The Stoic approach of questioning whether engagement is worth the cost of peace creates space for wisdom to operate. In that space, we can assess whether our response will improve or worsen the situation, whether our energy would be better invested elsewhere, whether our ego is driving us toward an unproductive confrontation. Emotions are like a runaway car. Stillness is the handbrake that keeps you from going off the cliff. Here's a real story that shows what this kind of strength looks like. And you should hear it because you might just be this person without realizing it. Paul worked in customer service at a telecom company. Every day he fielded dozens of calls from frustrated, angry customers. Some even cursed at him for no reason. The runaway car metaphor captures both the danger of unchecked emotional reactions and the power of conscious intervention. Emotions, especially strong ones like anger, fear, or frustration, can generate tremendous momentum that carries us far from our intended destination. Like a car rolling down a hill, they can quickly reach speeds that make steering impossible and crashes inevitable. The handbrake of stillness doesn't stop the car instantly. Emotions don't disappear the moment we decide to be still, but it provides enough resistance to prevent disaster and create space for more conscious navigation. One day, a woman screamed at him for 15 straight minutes because her Wi-Fi cut out in the middle of a drama series. Paul thought about hanging up, but he didn't. Instead, he lowered his voice and said, "Ma'am, I can't restore your Wi-Fi right this second, but I want you to know I hear everything you're upset about." Silence. Then for the first time in that call, she stopped yelling. And Paul knew. It wasn't because he was a tech wizard. It was because he didn't react. He chose stillness. He didn't need to win. He just needed to stay grounded. Paul's response demonstrates several Stoic principles in action simultaneously. First, he maintained emotional equilibrium despite significant provocation. 15 minutes of screaming would test anyone's patience. Second, he chose empathy over defensiveness, recognizing that the woman's anger, while misdirected at him, reflected genuine frustration with her situation. Third, he focused on what he could control, his response, rather than what he couldn't, her emotional state, the technical problem, or her unreasonable expectations. Fourth, he transformed a confrontation into connection through conscious non-reactivity. His lowered voice created contrast with her raised voice. His acknowledgement validated her feelings without accepting abuse, and his stillness created space for her to step back from her emotional escalation. So the next time someone gets under your skin, try this. Don't react. Don't clap back. Don't text back right away. Don't fire off a snappy retort. Pause for 3 seconds. Look at them. Look at yourself. Ask, where are they trying to pull me? Do I really need to follow? This 3-second pause represents a revolutionary practice in our instant response culture. 3 seconds might seem insignificant, barely enough time to take a breath, but it's often sufficient time for wisdom to intervene, for perspective to emerge, for choice to replace compulsion. In those 3 seconds, you can observe both the external trigger, what they're doing, and your internal reaction, what you're feeling. Then consciously choose your response, rather than being driven by automatic patterns. In that one small moment, you've chosen power. You can practice this every day. When someone cuts in line, instead of glaring, look down at your feet and notice your breath. When a loved one nags, instead of snapping, just nod and say nothing. At first, it might feel like losing, but remember, only the weak feel the need to win every petty clash. The strong save their energy for the battles that matter. These micro practices build macro strength over time. Each conscious choice not to react strengthens your capacity for conscious choice in more significant situations. Each moment of chosen stillness increases your ability to remain still when stillness serves your larger purposes. The person who can remain calm when someone cuts in line is developing the capacity to remain steady during more serious provocations. The person who can resist the urge to snap at minor nagging is building the patience needed for major relationship challenges. You're midway through this exploration. And if you're still here, I know you're not just here for theory. You're searching for a way of living deeper, steadier, more grounded. So let the like button mark the start of your journey, a path to rebuild from the inside out. Each part that follows will lay another brick on that foundation. Don't stop now. Every piece of this video is a building block, and in the end, you'll have something solid. Let's keep going. Number 6, start from ordinary. People often ask, how can I become extraordinary? But few start with a more honest question. Am I willing to accept my own ordinariness in a world where everyone's trying to stand out? Where social media turns being special into a false standard? Stoic philosophy quietly offers something different. Just be present. No need to define yourself. No need to perform. Just live rightly every day. This acceptance of ordinariness isn't resignation to mediocrity. It's recognition that extraordinary character often emerges from ordinary circumstances, handled with extraordinary integrity. The paradox is that those most concerned with appearing more special often achieve the least authentic success, while those focused on doing good work regardless of recognition often create the most lasting impact. The pursuit of specialness for its own sake tends to breed anxiety, comparison, and performative behavior that ultimately separates us from the very qualities that might make us genuinely remarkable. We feel this pressure to prove something, that we were on the right path, or that we're better than others, that we're destined for greatness. But the truth is, most of the time, we're just trying to quiet a deeply human fear that we're not enough. And it's that rejection of being ordinary that pushes us to chase things that aren't ours, losing both our peace and our true direction. This fear of ordinariness drives much of modern anxiety and dissatisfaction. We've been conditioned to believe that value comes from uniqueness, that worth requires distinction, that significance demands recognition. Social media amplifies this pressure by providing constant exposure to others' highlight reels, creating the illusion that everyone else is living more interesting, successful, or meaningful lives. But this conditioning creates a perpetual state of striving that can never be satisfied, because there will always be someone more unique, more distinguished, more recognized. The chase for specialness becomes a treadmill that exhausts us while taking us nowhere. A Stoic doesn't deny their limits. They learn to live with them, work within them, and quietly move beyond them. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Do not waste what remains of your life in speculating about others unless it is for some mutual benefit. Think only of yourself and what it is that you are doing." Every moment spent comparing is a moment not truly lived. Every time you try to prove you're better, you miss the chance to actually grow. This isn't selfishness, but focus. Comparison is the thief of both joy and genuine development because it places our attention on others' performance rather than our own improvement. When we measure ourselves against others, we lose sight of our own progress, our own path, our own purpose. We begin to define success in terms of relative position rather than absolute growth, which means our sense of achievement becomes dependent on others' failures, a psychologically toxic foundation for happiness. Are you living by what you believe is right, or are you chasing someone else's idea of success? Look at the scientist Michael Faraday. He came from poverty and worked as a bookbinder in his youth. No university degree, no early recognition. Yet he laid the groundwork for modern electromagnetism. His strength didn't come from status or pedigree, but from the quiet pursuit of what was right, in obscurity, in simplicity, with the conviction that real worth lies in what you do, not how others see you. Faraday's story illustrates how significance often emerges from seemingly insignificant circumstances when approached with the right attitude. His contributions to science weren't motivated by fame, recognition, or competition with other scientists. They were driven by genuine curiosity and rigorous work. He exemplifies the Stoic ideal of focusing on the work itself rather than the work's reception, on the intrinsic value of effort rather than its extrinsic rewards. His lack of formal education, rather than being a limitation, freed him from academic conventions and allowed for original thinking that more traditionally trained scientists might have missed. In everyday life, you can start small. Don't try to impress, just do the work well, even if no one notices. Don't rush to speak. Listen until you truly understand what's being said. Don't aim to outshine others. Outdo who you were yesterday. Ask yourself, does this reflect my values, or am I just trying to look the part? These practices reorient us from external validation to internal integrity. The shift from how do I look to how am I doing represents a fundamental change in life orientation, from performance to substance, from impression management to character development. When we stop trying to impress and start trying to improve, we often become more impressive naturally, but more importantly, we become more at peace with ourselves regardless of others' opinions. Every time you're honest with yourself, you take a step closer to the kind of inner strength Stoicism holds dear. One simple but powerful practice is to choose something utterly mundane. Wash the dishes, sweep the floor, reread an old chapter. Do it fully present. No complaints, no phone, no need for praise. You'll find a strange kind of quiet, the kind the crowd can't grasp, but a Stoic spends a lifetime seeking. This practice of bringing full attention to mundane tasks transforms them from chores into meditation, from drudgery into training for presence. The dishes become an opportunity for mindfulness. The sweeping becomes a practice of thoroughness. The reading becomes an exercise in focus. What changes isn't the task, but our relationship to it. We discover that any activity, no matter how humble, can become a source of satisfaction and growth when approached with the right attitude. Real strength doesn't come from confidence or being seen. It comes from not needing either. When you accept that you don't have to be someone special to live a meaningful life, that's when you begin to truly grow. And in that state, when you're no longer striving to become but simply being, that's when you touch the extraordinary without anyone needing to call it that. This paradox that extraordinary achievement often comes from accepting ordinariness reflects a deep truth about human potential. When we stop performing for others and start living for ourselves, when we stop trying to prove our worth and start simply being worthy, we often discover capabilities we never knew we had. The energy that was previously spent on impression management gets redirected toward genuine development. The anxiety that came from constant comparison gets replaced by the peace that comes from knowing our own path. And then you are ready for the next lesson to endure uncertainty. Because when you no longer need to control outcomes or cling to a fixed identity, you'll realize it's in the unknown that your will is shaped. And in life's blind spots, the one who doesn't stumble is the one who already knows who they are. Number 7, stay calm in the unknown. You wake up one morning, open your eyes and ask yourself, where am I heading today? Will everything be okay? Have I made the right choices? Questions like these aren't signs of weakness. They're proof of a deeper truth. The world is uncertain and always will be. The Stoics didn't run from that. They faced uncertainty not with panic, but with composure. These morning questions reveal the fundamental human condition. We are conscious beings trying to navigate an unconscious universe, planning creatures operating in an unplannable reality, meaning-seeking entities existing in circumstances that often seem random and chaotic. The anxiety that accompanies these questions is natural. Uncertainty triggers our survival instincts, activating fight-or-flight responses that evolve to help us deal with immediate physical threats, but often feel overwhelming when applied to complex modern challenges that can't be resolved through quick action. In Stoic philosophy, believing in your own strength doesn't mean thinking you can control everything. It means trusting that even in an unpredictable world, you can stay grounded, clear-headed, and dignified. The world runs on change. Nothing truly stands still. Health, reputation, wealth, relationships, emotions, even the weather today can shift in an instant. This acknowledgement of universal change, what Buddhists call impermanence and Stoics call the natural order, isn't pessimistic but liberating. If we accept that change is the only constant, we stop expecting stability and start developing flexibility. We stop being surprised by disruption and start being prepared for adaptation. We stop mourning what was and start embracing what is. This doesn't mean becoming passive or indifferent, but rather becoming responsive rather than reactive, adaptable rather than rigid. Yet we cling to the idea of stability as if life can be neatly packed into a plan, a formula, a perfect order. But even the universe doesn't follow perfect stability. From atoms to galaxies, motion and change are fundamental laws. So why should our lives be the exception? This scientific perspective reinforces the Stoic insight. At the atomic level, particles are in constant motion. At the cosmic level, stars are born and die. Galaxies collide and merge. The universe itself is expanding. Even our own bodies are in constant flux, every cell replaced over time, every breath bringing change, every heartbeat marking another moment of transition. To expect our lives to be stable while existing in a fundamentally dynamic reality is not just unrealistic, but contrary to the very nature of existence. Uncertainty isn't a flaw in the system, it's the design. Because things can change. You can grow. If everything stayed fixed, you wouldn't evolve without challenges, without disruption. You'd never be forced to choose to take responsibility, to become stronger. You'd never truly know who you are if life were always predictable. This reframes uncertainty from obstacle to opportunity, from problem to possibility. In a perfectly predictable world, there would be no room for growth, no need for courage, no opportunity for character development. It's precisely because we don't know what's coming next that we must develop inner resources to handle whatever comes. It's precisely because outcomes are uncertain that our choices matter. If everything were predetermined, decision-making would be meaningless. Because the future is open, our responses to present circumstances become crucially important. In that way, uncertainty isn't an obstacle. It's the very condition for growth. The Stoics didn't try to erase ambiguity. They trained to live within it without losing themselves because they understood. If you're only calm when everything's clear, that's not calm. If you're only steady when the path is mapped out, that's not strength. Real strength is moving with reason even when the way is unclear. This distinction between conditional and unconditional stability is crucial. Many people appear strong during good times when they have clear directions, adequate resources, supportive relationships, and favorable circumstances. But this apparent strength often crumbles when conditions change. True strength, Stoic strength, remains consistent regardless of external circumstances. It's not dependent on having all the answers, but on maintaining composure while seeking them. It's not based on knowing what will happen, but on trusting your ability to handle whatever does happen. It's holding your values steady, even as the world shifts around you. It's not knowing what tomorrow brings, but choosing integrity today. The irony is, it's our craving for certainty that makes us most fragile. When we cling to a vision, a plan, an expected outcome, just one small deviation can throw us off. This clinging to certainty creates brittleness rather than strength. Like a rigid tree that breaks in strong winds while flexible reeds bend and survive, Attachment to specific outcomes makes us vulnerable to the inevitable changes that life brings. The person who has planned every detail of their career path may be devastated by an unexpected layoff, while the person who has developed adaptable skills and maintained open options may see the same event as a chance for new opportunities. Most of our fear and anxiety doesn't come from the present, but from the thought that the future might not match our expectations. But the future has never been in our hands. What is in our hands is how we meet this moment. Belief in yourself doesn't come from predicting what's next. It comes from knowing that whatever comes, you'll meet it with strength. This temporal insight reveals that most psychological suffering occurs not from present circumstances, but from projected future ones. We suffer not from what is happening, but from what we imagine might happen, not from current reality, but from anticipated disaster. This forward-focused anxiety is often completely unproductive. We exhaust ourselves worrying about situations that may never occur, while missing opportunities to respond effectively to situations that are actually occurring. No rushing to react, no spiraling into fear, no compromise on what matters. That's the foundation of Stoic inner power. Not control over the world, but control over yourself. The Bible also says, "Walk by faith, not by sight." In life, you don't always need a clear view of what's ahead. Sometimes it's the lack of clarity that forces you to lean on something deeper: your courage. This biblical reference reinforces the Stoic insight that visible evidence isn't always necessary for wise action. Faith in this context isn't blind belief, but trust in principles that have proven reliable even when immediate circumstances are confusing. It's the confidence that comes from knowing your own character, understanding your own values, and trusting your ability to navigate challenges based on these internal resources rather than external information. Think back to the moments when you grew the most. Weren't they always when you didn't know what was coming next? When you had no choice but to keep going, even with fear in your chest? Uncertainty doesn't block the path to growth. It is the path. And the strong aren't the ones who eliminate doubt. They're the ones who accept it, live with it, and still choose to act with courage every single day. This retrospective analysis often reveals that our most significant development occurred during our most uncertain periods. The job loss that forced career reconsideration, the relationship ending that prompted self-examination, the health crisis that clarified priorities, the financial setback that taught resourcefulness. These uncertain, uncomfortable periods often become the moments we later recognize as crucial turning points. The growth happened not despite the uncertainty, but because of it. Number 8, fear walks with you. There's an uncomfortable truth. Fear doesn't go away. There's no off switch, no magic lever to flip that makes you instantly brave. But the thing is, it doesn't need to disappear. Strength doesn't come from erasing fear from your mind. It comes from moving forward. Even when your legs are shaking, you might be waiting until you're confident enough or not anxious anymore before you act. But will that day ever come? Or is that very waiting quietly stealing your time, your chances, and your life? This uncomfortable truth challenges one of the most persistent myths about courage: that brave people don't feel afraid. Hollywood heroes, motivational speakers, and cultural narratives often present courage as the absence of fear rather than action despite fear. But this misrepresentation creates unrealistic expectations and prevents people from acting because they think they should wait until fear disappears. The reality is that fear is a normal human emotion that serves important biological and psychological functions. It alerts us to potential dangers, prepares our bodies for action, and motivates careful consideration of our choices. The Stoics didn't treat fear like an enemy to defeat. They accepted it as an inevitable part of being human. Like a soldier who's grown used to the noise of battle, they didn't need silence to march on. They kept walking, noise and all. Don't hope that events will turn out the way you want. Welcome events in whichever way they happen. This is the path to peace. That's not just a teaching, it's freedom. This acceptance of fear as a traveling companion, rather than an enemy to be defeated, represents a profound shift in how we relate to uncomfortable emotions. The soldier metaphor is particularly apt because it acknowledges that fear, like the noise of battle, may be unpleasant but doesn't have to be paralyzing. Soldiers don't wait for battlefields to become quiet before they advance. They learn to function effectively despite the noise. Similarly, we can learn to act effectively despite the presence of fear. You don't have to wait for inner calm to set sail. Have you ever passed up an opportunity because you are afraid to fail? Stayed silent in the face of injustice because you feared being judged? The real question isn't, are you afraid? It's, what will you do? Even though you're afraid, fear shadows every meaningful effort. Avoid it, and you're also avoiding the very path to the life you truly want. These rhetorical questions invite honest self-reflection about the cost of fear avoidance. Most people can identify moments when fear prevented them from taking actions they later regretted not taking. The job application not submitted, the relationship conversation avoided, the creative project never started, the injustice witnessed but not challenged. These omissions often haunt us more than our actions ever could. The reframe from, am I afraid, to, what will I do even though I'm afraid, shifts focus from the emotion to the choice, from the internal experience to the external action. Here's a story worth pausing for, not because it's pretty, but because it's real. Thomas, 34, an engineer, lived by the book. Stable job, good salary, nothing to complain about except himself. He woke up each day feeling like he was living someone else's life. When the chance came to do something different, to switch careers, to follow what he loved, Thomas froze. He made excuses. I need more time, more training, more savings. Truth is, he was scared. Thomas's story reflects the experience of countless people who find themselves trapped in lives that feel safe but unsatisfying. His excuses, needing more time, training, or savings, are common rationalizations that fear uses to maintain the status quo. These aren't necessarily false needs, but they often become perfectionist requirements that can never be fully met. There will always be more to learn, more to save, more preparation that could be done. Fear disguises itself as prudence, procrastination as preparation. Then one day, a car accident put him in the hospital for 2 weeks. It wasn't life-threatening, but it was enough to make him realize, life doesn't owe you a ready day. After he got out, he quit his job, started a small design project. Still scared, but he moved. Not fearless, just moving. The hospital experience provided Thomas with what psychologists call a mortality salience moment, a reminder of life's fragility and limitation that often catalyzes major decisions. These wake-up calls, whether through illness, loss, or other disruptions, can cut through the fog of daily routine and force us to confront fundamental questions about how we're spending our limited time. Thomas's realization that life doesn't owe you a ready day captures a crucial insight. We can wait forever for ideal conditions, but ideal conditions may never come. Sometimes the choice is between acting with fear or not acting at all. Change begins when you stop demanding your mind be at peace. Instead, start watching fear like you'd watch a passing cloud, real, visible, but not something you have to follow. When fear shows up, ask yourself, is this fear truly stopping me from acting, or just stopping me from feeling comfortable? This shift from trying to eliminate fear to simply observing it reflects principles found in mindfulness meditation and cognitive behavioral therapy. The cloud metaphor is particularly useful because it suggests that fear, like weather, is temporary and changeable. Clouds don't require our permission to appear, and they don't require our action to disappear. They simply move across the sky of consciousness while we remain grounded. The distinction between fear-stopping action versus stopping comfort is crucial because it clarifies that the issue isn't the presence of fear, but our relationship to discomfort. Your feelings and your actions don't have to match. You can tremble and still speak, worry and still act. There's a simple but powerful practice. Every morning, write down one small action you know you should take, but have been avoiding because of fear. Nothing big. Maybe a hard phone call, an unfinished email, or finally saying what you really think. Once it's written, do it before your brain has time to negotiate. Don't overthink it. Do first, understand later. This decoupling of feeling and action represents one of the most liberating insights in Stoic philosophy. We've been conditioned to believe that we should only act when we feel ready, confident, or motivated. But this creates a dependency on emotional states that are often beyond our direct control and frequently unreliable. The practice of morning action taking bypasses the analytical mind that tends to create obstacles and excuses. By acting before the brain has time to negotiate, we build evidence that we can function effectively despite uncomfortable emotions. That moment, that's where real strength is born. And if you've ever thought you were weak just because you still feel fear, remember, courage isn't the absence of fear. Courage is choosing not to let fear drive. Life doesn't need you to be fearless, just intentional. This redefinition of courage from fearlessness to intentional action, despite fear, is both more realistic and more achievable than traditional concepts of bravery. It acknowledges the normal human experience of fear while emphasizing the element that we can actually control our choices. The metaphor of not letting fear drive suggests that fear can be a passenger in our vehicle, but it doesn't have to be given control of the steering wheel, the gas pedal, or the destination. There's no path to steadiness that doesn't pass through discomfort. If you're ready to take the next step, even with fear still by your side, drop a comment, walk with fear. Mark this moment as the one where you finally started trusting your own inner strength. This acknowledgement that steadiness requires passage through discomfort challenges the common desire to find a comfortable path to growth. But psychological research confirms what Stoics understood centuries ago. Resilience is built through gradually increasing exposure to manageable stress, not through avoidance of all difficulty. The invitation to walk with fear rather than eliminate it offers a more sustainable approach to courage, one that doesn't require superhuman fearlessness, but simply requires human willingness to act despite normal emotional responses. Number 9, strength is a daily choice. There's a particular kind of exhaustion. It's when you feel like you're doing everything right, trying your best to be okay, but deep down something feels hollow, like nothing's really moving forward. You work, get things done, treat others kindly, but still feel shaky, unsure, not quite grounded. This exhaustion speaks to a common modern experience, the sense of going through the motions of a good life without feeling the substance of it. It's the experience of checking all the boxes that society tells us matter: career progress, social obligations, basic decency, while still feeling fundamentally unsteady. This hollowness often arises when our actions are driven by external expectations rather than internal conviction, when we're performing goodness rather than embodying it, when we're trying to be okay rather than actually building the foundation for genuine stability. That feeling often creeps in during quiet evenings when the notifications stop, when no one needs you, when it's just you sitting with yourself. And that's when Stoic philosophy speaks up, not in lofty theory, but as a simple human reminder. Every day is a test of your inner strength, not some grand dramatic exam, but small, quiet moments that are easy to overlook. These quiet moments reveal the gap between our public persona and our private reality. When external distractions fade and social roles are temporarily suspended, we're left with the unadorned truth of who we are and how we feel. It's in these unguarded moments that hollow performance becomes most apparent and authentic strength becomes most necessary. The Stoic recognition that strength is tested daily in small moments rather than occasionally in dramatic ones reflects a more realistic understanding of how character actually develops. Strength isn't about how much pressure you can carry, it's about how you handle the small stuff that most people ignore. Ever wonder why traffic jams make us snap? Why a late reply irritates us? Or why a bad cup of coffee can throw off the whole day? It's because we haven't trained our minds properly. This analysis of disproportionate reactions to minor irritations reveals something important about psychological resilience. If small frustrations can destabilize us, it suggests that our emotional regulation systems are undertrained for even modest challenges. The traffic jam, anger; the late reply, irritation; the bad coffee, disappointment. These reactions indicate that we're operating with very narrow tolerance for normal life inconveniences. Like physical fitness, mental fitness requires regular training with gradually increasing resistance. You want to be stronger? Start by accepting the bad coffee without complaint. Smile at the security guard, even when your mind feels like it's about to snap. These things seem small, but every time you do them, you lay another brick in the foundation of your inner resilience. This practical prescription for strength building focuses on what Stoics called the discipline of assent, the practice of choosing our responses to impressions rather than being automatically driven by them. The bad coffee becomes a training opportunity for acceptance of imperfect circumstances. The security guard interaction becomes practice for maintaining kindness regardless of internal state. These micro exercises in self-regulation build the mental muscle needed for larger challenges. Like physical exercise, the consistency of practice matters more than the magnitude of individual efforts. There's a simple but powerful way to build this. Choose one small difficult thing each day and do it no matter your mood. Make your bed as soon as you wake up. Reply to that email you've been avoiding. Make the phone call you've been dreading. Take out the trash. Wash the dishes. Fold the laundry. This practice of daily difficult actions, regardless of mood, builds what psychologists call self-efficacy confidence in one's ability to execute behaviors necessary to produce specific performance attainments. Each small act of self-direction, especially when it goes against immediate inclination, provides evidence that we can trust ourselves to do what we commit to doing. The specific tasks matter less than the consistency of following through despite resistance. Whether that resistance comes from laziness, fear, or simple lack of motivation. These things won't make you look impressive to others, but they'll make you start trusting yourself because you're proving you can make decisions and follow through. Not because you're inspired, not because someone's watching, but because you chose to. This internal trust building is crucial for genuine confidence, as opposed to the confidence that depends on external validation or ideal circumstances. When we consistently keep small promises to ourselves, we develop evidence that we can be relied upon for larger commitments. This creates a positive feedback loop. Trust leads to bigger challenges. Success with bigger challenges increases trust, which enables even larger challenges. The process begins with tasks so small that motivation is irrelevant and willpower can easily overcome resistance. One day, something bigger will come. Loss, betrayal, failure. And when it does, you won't need to scramble to prepare because you already have. You've been training all along quietly, consistently. This preparation for major challenges through minor daily practices reflects the Stoic understanding that character is built incrementally through repeated choices rather than suddenly in moments of crisis. The person who has trained themselves to remain steady when dealing with the bad coffee is building the same mental muscles needed to remain steady when dealing with job loss. The person who can make their bed despite not feeling like it is developing the same willpower needed to continue important work despite major setbacks. Weak people wait for motivation to act. Strong people act to build stability within. And here's the paradox. The more consistently you do the simple things, the more grounded you'll feel when life gets complicated. This paradox that handling small things well prepares us for big things reflects a principle found throughout Stoic philosophy. Excellence in little things leads to excellence in great things, while neglect of small matters creates vulnerability when large matters arise. The consistency builds both practical habits and psychological resilience. We learn that we can function effectively regardless of our emotional state, that external circumstances don't have to determine internal experience, that we possess more control over our responses than we might have believed. What we call strength is really just the habit of not giving up on the little things. So look back at today. How many chances to train did you pass up when you held your tongue instead of arguing? That was strength. When you kept working, even though no one praised you, that was strength. When you folded the blanket, turned off your phone, and said to yourself, "I'm doing this because I choose discipline, not because I feel good." That was strength. This reframe of unnoticed daily actions as strength training helps us recognize that we're already stronger than we might realize and that opportunities for further development are constantly available. The held tongue, the unpraised work, the disciplined choice, these moments that might seem insignificant in isolation become significant when viewed as part of an ongoing training program. This perspective transforms mundane experiences into meaningful practices and routine days into opportunities for character development. Mental strength doesn't come from a feeling, it comes from consistent action. You don't have to feel strong to begin. Act like someone who is, and you'll become that person. And if there's one thing worth believing in every morning, it's your ability to train yourself every day without needing anyone to see it. This principle, act like the person you want to become, reflects what psychologists call behavioral activation, where changes in behavior lead to changes in identity rather than the reverse. Instead of waiting to feel strong before acting strong, we act strong and gradually become strong. The morning belief in our capacity for daily self-training provides a sustainable foundation for long-term development, one that doesn't depend on external recognition or dramatic transformations, but on quiet, consistent growth. Conclusion: the unshakable foundation. We've just explored 9 Stoic ways to believe in your inner strength. Not the flashy kind, but the quiet, grounded force within. From choosing to master yourself instead of trying to change the world, to walking forward with fear, rather than waiting for it to disappear, to holding your values no matter the storm, or simply practicing every day to become more solid. Each principle builds upon the others, creating a comprehensive framework for developing authentic resilience. The progression moves from external to internal focus, from reactive to responsive patterns, from circumstantial to principle-based living. Together, these 9 practices create what we might call an unshakable foundation, not because external circumstances can't affect us, but because our core responses remain consistent regardless of external circumstances. Each act is small, intentional, and quietly powerful. Repeated over time, these actions build true strength. Every day, every thought, every choice is a chance. And when you start living with that awareness, no one and nothing can take away the strength inside you. This emphasis on small, intentional acts reflects the Stoic understanding that character is built through accumulated choices rather than dramatic gestures. The daily nature of the practice ensures that strength building becomes integrated into ordinary life rather than reserved for special occasions or crisis moments. The quiet power of these practices lies in their sustainability. They don't require special circumstances, external resources, or other people's cooperation. If this exploration stirred something in you, if even for a moment you pause to reflect or look inward, then hit like. Not for me, but for yourself. Mark this moment as a quiet promise to grow. Drop a comment, even just a single line, to turn reflection into action. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, share it with them. You never know the impact a single click can have. The invitation to engagement serves multiple purposes beyond typical social media metrics. The like becomes a moment of commitment to oneself. The comment transforms passive consumption into active participation, and sharing extends the potential impact to others who might benefit from these insights. These small digital actions can serve as the first steps in implementing the larger principles discussed. Don't forget to subscribe. There's more grounded, real, and powerful content ahead. And I'll be right here with you on this journey to stand steady in the world. The subscription is framed not as following a content creator, but as joining a community of people committed to developing genuine strength and stability. This ongoing journey acknowledges that building inner strength isn't a one-time achievement, but a lifelong practice that benefits from continued learning, reminders, and community support. The phrase "stand steady in the world" captures both the goal, stability, and the context, a world that will continue to present challenges. In the end, these 9 principles offer not a destination, but a direction, not a promise that life will become easy, but tools to remain steady when it becomes difficult. They represent the distilled wisdom of those who have faced uncertainty, adversity, and fear, and found ways not merely to survive, but to thrive through inner strength that no external circumstance can diminish. This is the gift of Stoicism, not the elimination of life's challenges, but the development of an unshakable foundation that can support us through whatever challenges may come.